So in today's episode, we're going to go over some different topics that we don't normally cover. And one of those topics is top tips to stay away from burnout. Now this can be multitudes of things, and today we're going to go over those things and how I modify them to stay in the game for 30 years. The first thing that we want to change is the mode. And what does that mean? That means if you're rotating and moving and changing sets and reps and exercises, you're going to have a far less burnout rate than if you're doing the same stupid shit over and over and over again. Now, the reason that you see these types of programs is because, guess what? They're easy to write. You don't need to know anybody's weaknesses. You don't need a lot of equipment to do a straight bar and straight squats all the time. But in reality, I've only ever met a few people that pushed over a decade that trained the exact same way all the time. The point is that if you have different modes and different stimuluses all the time, your body's going to have to adapt to new environments. And the number one important thing of training a conjugate style is that you maintain mentally fresh when you come into the gym and train hard. I love coming into the gym and train because my body's going to get pushed in a different way all the time, mixing and matching bands and chains and bars. Now, it doesn't mean that there's not a lot of thought to it. There is. But the key is the real thought comes from wanting to come in and train and be passionate about working out every time you walk into the gym. And when you change modes, that happens a lot more often, and staleness is a lot harder to find. The next thing is to change the environment. Now, what does that mean? That can come in a variety of ways. One of my favorite times of the year, although it wears me the hell out, is the Arnold Classic. And why? Because we get new training partners in the gym. I don't want them to beat me in my own gym, right? I want to train harder. I'm not saying impress, but I want to keep up with what other people are doing. I want them to show that what I'm doing is working really well in my entire group, and people get like, holy shit, these guys are in impeccable shape. But sometimes that doesn't work to my advantage. So what I'll do sometimes is I'll fly all the way to California and I'll train with Mike O'Hearn, and I'll go to Gold's Gym. Now they train completely different than I train, but it's a new stimulus. And when I come back to my facility, it's a new energy of ready to train. It's maybe a new exercise that I haven't played with, or a new rep range that O'Hearn and I have talked about or even experimented on in the gym. Or maybe I'm watching somebody else over here doing something I didn't think of. I don't know how many times that has happened because of the amount I travel. And sometimes when I go do seminars, when I come back, I'm so ready to work out because my workouts have been destroyed from plane rides and shitty foods and all these other things that people look as detriments. I look at traveling as deloading, and we'll get into that next. The next big thing we have to look at is deloads, and I like to use this saying, deload your program or it deloads you. What does that mean? That means if you do not build deloading into your program, whether you feel the best or the worst in the world, what happens is that injuries, overtraining, and staleness make you deload anyway. So what I find is that a nice trick is that for deloads, I try to plan in something that's a little lower volume or a little lower intensity every 3 weeks, whether I want to or not. And what's that done? That's kept me in the game for 30 years. The reason is that nothing keeps climbing straight up and down. Everything works in cyclic waves. If we know that, then we just follow the wave and we block it out. So sometimes I take my Wenning warm-ups down to 2 rounds instead of 4. Sometimes I don't go as heavy on the max day as I possibly want to. Or even another big advanced trick is that I will pick an exercise that I know I can't go heavy on, no matter what I try to do. That's still a deload, right? It's an exercise that took me out of my strength and made me work my weaknesses. Obviously, I can't lift as much weight, right? So let's look at it in this perspective. If I do a good morning, per se, as long as I don't get hurt, if I do a good morning, I'm probably only going to be able to good morning half of what I can squat. That's still a fucking deload, okay? So what you have to realize is that sometimes you can pick exercises that force you to deload. But I like to do deloads in this fashion. 1, shorten the rest intervals. Make the workouts shorter. So I say, okay, my workouts are normally 50 minutes to an hour. Now they're only 30 minutes, whatever I can get done at that time. The next thing I'll do is I'll take something out, sets or reps. A lot of times that comes in the warm-up. I'll take the warm-up 4 sets of 25, probably 95% of the year. Sometimes they'll go down to 2, just because I just don't feel good that day, okay? Other times the max effort work gets cut out for volume. And now, more importantly, the next thing I'll do is I'll deload my spine. What I've noticed is that if my hands aren't straining and my back's not straining, my body's not really straining. Now, how do we get around that? What we do is we belt squat. So every 4 to 6 weeks, we will throw the belt squat in either for speed or for maxing. And what I have found is that when you load the spine or load the legs from the hips, that the body doesn't really get overtrained. It's when you actually load the spine and the hands. Not a lot of data on that, but I've had a lot of personal experience with it. So I find if your spine's not involved and your hands aren't involved, overtraining becomes very, very hard to do. The next big thing, or the last thing that we're going to talk about today, is you just got to rest, okay? A lot of people, they get burned out. They just want to go 100 miles an hour right off the rip. And I find that that's not really conducive. If you look at a lot of the old Russian style training, what ends up happening is if you look at their standard volume, it falls up to about 75-80% of total loading. Now, we could take that all different ways, but what I look at it as is that they're not going 100 miles an hour all the time. They're staying consistent. So good training is consistent training, but it's consistent training with enough rest and recovery. Now, you can get that through good sleep, you can get that through naps, you can get that through good nutrition, and you can get that from low stress levels. I find that all four of those are key. I have seen people with the best programs in the world flunk out of those programs and think they don't work because they don't have those four things lined up. So make sure that if you're doing online coaching or you're doing a program, that you're giving that program as much as you possibly can by coming to every workout with as much as you can every day. That means low stress levels, high nutrition, and high sleep. If you got those things covered, your program is probably going to do pretty good, even if your program is lackluster in science. But in reality, I would say that these are the four things and the four tips that you need to stay away from burnout, and I hope this helps you guys get better.